Hi everyone, I'm Yakov Horowitz, and welcome to our live. The topic of our live is trolling members of the LGBTQ community. And I want to have a respectful, thoughtful, nuanced discussion about a very complex and a subject that's filled with a lot of where nuance is needed, where we need thoughtfulness. And my overriding request globally is for everyone to please refrain from making negative comments, trolling, with such a complicated subject. My name is Yakov Horowitz. Welcome. If you're interested, there's a link in my in my Instagram stories. The last post has a link that has source material that I'll be quoting. From. I want to start with two things. I'm going to read two of the Rambam's, Maimonides, Ani Mamins. Maimonides, Rambam has 13 articles of faith that observant Jews are supposed to believe in. I want to read two of them, and then I'm going to read a mother's prayer. I hope you find it meaningful. First, the Ani Mamins. Ani Mamin b'emuna shlema, I believe with perfect, complete faith. Shekol Torah hametzuya ata biyadenu, that the entire Torah that we have in our hands today, Hi hanasun lo Moshe Rabbeinu olav shalom. That's the Torah that was given to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Moses, on Har Sinai. That's an article of faith that the Torah that we have came directly from God through Moshe Rabbeinu, and what we have today is that Torah. Number 9 is Ani Mamin b'emuna shlema, I believe in full faith. Shezos HaTorah lo tehem uchlefes, the Torah is not going to be switched. That Hashem will not give another Torah, nor will this be switched with anything. I want to start by saying the reason I mentioned these two Ani Mamins is because I believe in everything that it says in the Torah, including the prohibition on male to male, on relations. At the same time, two things can be true at the same time. We can have hearts overflowing with empathy, with goodness, with understanding. At the same time, it's not a conflict at all. I want to read to you a tefillah that a woman named Yocheved Lindenbaum wrote about her child. She has a gay child, and she actually was one of the first people that asked me to get involved in this space to help parents navigate all of these issues, to help them be able to raise their children, to be well adjusted, to be emotionally healthy, God forbid not to harm themselves or do things that are self-destructive because of the turmoil in their lives. She happens to be a chaplain. That's her day job. I think she retired from it. She was a chaplain for years. And she took it off Elokai Neshama Shenasata Bi Tahorihi, the tefillah that we say in the morning, that we thank Hashem for giving us our neshama, our soul. But this was her, of course she did a different version of it. I found it just beyond meaningful. I hope I'll get through it. Elokai, God, neshama shenasata li, the soul that you gave me, referring to her son, her gay son. Neshama shenasata bi tahiri, the soul that you gave me is pure. Ata barasa, you created it, Hashem. Ata yitzarta, you formed it. Ata natata berachmi, you placed this child in my womb. V'nafachta chayim bekirba b'yom haladatai, and you breathed life into it. It's based on what our sages talk about, that you brought life into the day of the child's birth. You provided them with an neshama. Moed ani lefanecha, I stand before you with gratitude. Ribbon kol hamasam, the creator of the world. Al zeh shenasata li hayelad hazeh. Thanking you, Hashem, God, for giving me this child. L'shamro, to watch over him. La'ahavo, to love him. Ud'legadlo, and to raise him. La'amoid lefnei kisei kvedecha, to stand before you, Hashem. Avinu avarachman, our Father in heaven, that is merciful. Pesachas libo, open my child's heart. Lahargish es yadecha, open my child's heart, that he should feel, Hashem, your loving embrace. Chazak yadov, strengthen his hands, lasek ve'avodasecha, to serve you. Ushmaras nafsh al nafsho v'gufo, and watch over his soul, his spiritual soul, v'gufo, and his physical being, meaning that he should grow up healthy and well adjusted. Galei einei ulevavos avadecha, please open the eyes and the hearts of your servants, meaning all of us, the community. Liros es ma'alosov, to see his many positive attributes. L'chabed es nishmaso, to respect his soul. V'karevoso l'tochei amecha, and encircle him, embrace him into the loving embrace of your nation. So I started with two things. I started saying the Ani Mamins, that I believe in perfect faith, not perfect faith, I believe in full faith in every word of the Torah. And at the same time, you hear a mother's prayer, davening to Hashem, thanking Hashem for this beautiful child, asking that he grow up to serve Hashem, and that people should come and see him for his incredible qualities. This is such a challenging subject. It's so multifaceted. There's a whole faith issue, there's practical issues, there's family, there's community. It is so complicated. What I really want to bring out is that the place to discuss issues like this with members of the LGBT community is not harshly trolling them on the internet or saying hurtful things to them. I decided to make this live, and others like it. If you look, as I said, there's a link you can get there's a link there that has many articles that I've written, some talks that I gave, all around this subject. Some of them, I'll reference them. Mrs. Lindenbaum's tefillah is in that folder too. Go to my stories on Instagram. Tomorrow I'll figure out, my administrative director will figure out a way to get it to all of you. I decided to do this specifically when several LGBTQ people contacted me in the last week or so, just expressing their pain that people were trolling them. But I'm really doing it. Why me? I'm doing it to fulfill a mission that I was given and a promise that I made. For those who don't know, from the younger generation, in 1996, I wrote an article about teens at risk. I was an 8th grade rabbi minding my own business in Muncie. I wrote an article about children abandoning religion. It was published in Agudas Yisrael in the Agudas paper. It was called The Jewish Observer. And my whole life got turned upside down by it. And Baruch Hashem, I worked together with Rabbi Moshe Sheraz Zatzal, who was the visionary, incredible leader of the Aguda and the Rosh Yeshivas, to try to figure it out, to try to start interventions to help all of our children achieve success. And Rabbi Shera told me, he passed away, I only worked with him for a few months. He was sick when I started working with him. Rabbi Shimshi Shera, his son, always said that his father used to say, I got to get out of the hospital, I have to help Yankee with Project Yes was the name of the organization. And he once told me, he repeated it later in different ways. He said, Rabbi Yankee, please make sure that you analyze the problems carefully and look for solutions. And that's what I've tried to do since then for almost 30 years. Initially, it started with Teens at Risk. Then if you want to know what the through line and the various things I got involved in, I don't speak about this publicly, but that's the through line. Look for problems that are there, try to analyze them, and try to find solutions. Then I published Chumash and Gemara books, beginner books to help kids acclimate to Limudei Kodesh, to Judaic studies learning. Then in the 2000s, the early 2000s, when I realized that child abuse was such an issue, I decided to jump into that, and that was a very unpopular thing to talk about at the time. We published our child safety books. And now, over the past 7-8 years, I've been involved more in this space, helping families, parents of LGBTQ, children, help them raise them, speaking to many hundreds of LGBTQ adults that are trying to figure it out in so many different variations of this. And I'll get to that soon. But I also made a when I started realizing about the issue of LGBTQ matters, once I started realizing what an issue it was, my wife Udi and I decided to invite about a dozen LGBTQ young adults to our home in Monsey for lunch. I felt that if I'm getting into this space, I actually made a video. If you're interested, you can look in that folder. It was an 8-minute video or so. I was at a public forum, and they had a mic in front of us, and somebody asked about the LGBTQ issue, and I responded the way I respond to things, honestly, hopefully with nuance. You can see that video there. But I invited these young men and women to my home because I kept telling my wife, I don't understand this well enough. I need to speak to the kids. I need to find out what their lives were like. So they came, Udi made a delicious lunch. We sat for 2-3 hours. And two things really stand out in my mind. That one of them I've shared before, but I think it's important to hear it again. One of them was, it turned out, by the way, that from those 12, I knew several of the families, not knowing that they had LGBTQ children. So one of the young men, we went around, I told the people, you can either introduce yourselves by name or not. I introduced myself, or he did, and then we went around, everybody spoke, they told us their names. One of the children said something that just broke my heart into 100 pieces. He said, I just want you to know, Rabbi Horowitz, when I sat down at this table for lunch, I made a Shehechiyanu blessing. A Shehechiyanu blessing is what we make when we reach milestones that are positive. We make them on Yom Tovim, on holidays, and like occasions, something, that's... So he said, I never dreamed growing up gay, these were his words, I never dreamed growing up gay that a rabbi would let me into his house and invite me the way I am. And my heart just broke listening to this young man. After lunch, and this is what I want to also share, when we finished lunch, I asked the kids at the end, we really did get a much better understanding for what their lives were about. We had very candid discussions. Obviously, there was a large learning curve. I'm still not finished with it. I'm still learning new things about the subject. But I asked them to go around. We were breaking up after lunch. And I went around the table. I said, guys, please tell me, what can I do to help you? Just tell me what I can do. So one of the kids said, Rabbi, could you do me a favor? Please tell people not to say hurtful things. That's what he said. Please tell people not to say hurtful things to us. And I said, that's it? That's all you want? And with the wisdom of an 80-year-old, this kid said, look, Rabbi, we have to figure this out ourselves. You can't help us with this. But please tell people to give us space and treat us with respect and not say hurtful things to us. And when I got the messages, I decided that I should speak up again and beg everyone to please be thoughtful and moderate and respectful when talking about such a sensitive issue. I wrote in the flyer that I would talk about this from a Torah perspective and an ethical one. First, the Torah perspective, and there's a lot of confusion about this. The Pasuk says, that if one Jew sees another Jew sinning, you should give them tochacha, whatever that means. You could say rebuke, constructive criticism, that we should inform other people. But there's a whole list of ways that should be done. And without even going into them, trolling on the internet in nasty ways certainly isn't even related to that concept. Rabbi Yakov Kamenetsky, Zeichat Tzadik L'Vracha, said that, we just read it in the Torah recently, that Yakov Avinu, our patriarch Jacob, he came to a well, and there was some shepherds there, and he told them, he says, Achai me'ayin atem, where are you from? And they answered, what city? They're from Haran, and they were chatting. So Rabbi Kamenetsky said, why did he start it with Achai, brothers? He never met them. Like, what was that for? And Rabbi Kamenetsky says that Yakov his trait was emes, was truthfulness. And he was offended by the fact that these people who were shepherds are supposed to give a full day's work. And they were hanging out by the well in the middle of the day. The common practice was there were no lights then, so you worked from sun up to sundown. So a shepherd coming in the middle of the day was basically stealing from their boss. But Yaakov said, I don't know these people. I'm just gonna, my first words to them are going to be words of rebuke. So he started speaking. And that's what it says in Halacha. There are laws and rules for how this is done. And this ain't it, folks. Trolling people on the internet. There are people who are more strident in the way they talk about issues and things that they're upset about, violations of the Torah. But I can just tell you that's not what I learned from my rabbeim, especially our great Rebbe, Rabbi Avraham Pam. He spoke to us. He gave us constructive criticism many times, but it was done in his way, in the Darchei Noam way, in a way of gentleness and speaking to us with incredible respect that I don't think we deserved at the time. And I did not see this from my parents. None of this is so foreign to me, to go and just take someone down in a public forum. There are broader public policy issues around this LGBTQ issue, and they're extremely complicated, and honestly solving them is above my pay grade. and I don't go there. But having said that, I think about how we should conduct ourselves. Just to give you an idea of what children and families are going through. To be fair, there are parents, Orthodox Jewish parents, that keep the full Torah, that are all in with their children, and they say, Hashem, you gave me this child, I'm going to raise my child. And, many of them express to me, Yankee, don't make it sound like it's a tragedy. This is the child Hashem gave us. But for a very large percentage of our community, we go through a tremendous amount of struggle trying to figure this all out. The faith piece, the believing what it says in the Torah, treating LGBTQ people, with humanity. It's complicated. Just a few things. Imagine a child growing up not feeling that they're gay, thinking that they're gay, and having no one to talk to. Just imagine what that's like for a child to be sitting boy or girl sitting in class with their friends, hanging out with their friends, knowing that they're different and not having anyone to talk to. Another unforgettable moment in my journey in this space, trying to help people. There was a high school student that he was valedictorian in 8th grade. A teacher's dream, a parent's dream, and his whole life fell apart for a period of about 18 months to 2 years. The parents called me that this kid was in such bad shape, and they can't figure it out. They tried everything. They went to therapists. They went to everyone, trying to figure out what's wrong, and they were really panicking. And someone called someone who called me, and they asked me if I would come to the house to meet this young man. And he told me these words. He said, Rabbi, I have an 800-pound gorilla on my shoulder. That's all I want to talk about. Everybody's coming to me. This is what he said. He said, everybody's asking me how I'm doing, why I'm sad, why I'm not eating right, why I'm not doing anything in school. He said, I have an 800-pound gorilla. Rebbe, I'm gay. I don't know how my parents are going to take it if I tell them. I don't know how my siblings will react. I don't know how my friends will react. So I never spoke to anyone. I was honored that he felt comfortable talking to me. One of my things I try to do is I try to give an affect that I'm approachable. I'm also not from the family, so it's easier, let's be honest. Think of that multiplied by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. People of dating age who are growing up and haven't told their parents yet. And now they're thinking about what to do. That was actually the dilemma in that 8-minute video. This young man came to my house, actually, charming, a lovely young man, a wonderful human being, kind, smart, with it. And he came to tell me, he says, look, Rebbe, I'm gay. My family doesn't know. And he said, my friends are starting to date. He said, I could date also, but how could I do this to another human being? How could I possibly do this? And mess up a girl's life, knowing that I can't give her what she needs from me. And I remember him telling me that it was such a comfort that he was able to talk to someone about it. That's a through line here. Trying to encourage you, all of you, to try to be accessible, that people can talk to you about things that are private and difficult. Rav Schwab, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, Rav Shimon Schwab, I had the privilege of teaching a few of his grandchildren when I was an 8th grade Rebbe. At one of the bar mitzvahs of his grandchild, I had the privilege of being there. And he asked his grandson, he says, the first time the Torah uses the word friend, was by the story of Yehuda and Tamar, which we read about in these Parshios now. Yehuda had sinned, he was very embarrassed, and he was comfortable confiding in one person. So it says that he gave over that certain objects, biyad re'ehu adulami, in the hands of his friend. And the Torah gave this man a crown, crowned him with the title of friend, because he was someone that Yehuda was able to talk to. And Rav Schwab told his grandson, I want you to be a good friend to your friends and be the type of person that your friends can talk to about anything, because that's a real friend. Parenthetically, if you notice, Yehuda didn't go to his family members, which is some of the challenge in some of these places and these issues. There are hundreds of couples now, right now. I know dozens and dozens who've come to me for help over the last 10 years, where one parent is gay and they're in a relationship with heterosexual, with someone who's not gay. And they're agonizing over what to do. Do they tell? Do they don't tell? What's it going to do to their family? What's coming out? Parents and grandparents and over life cycle issues. There's so much, you don't have to be able to figure all of this out to be able to help people. I'm not embarrassed to say that I haven't figured it out. If you ask me, why does God make people like this and what does he expect them to do? I tell you flat out, I don't know. It's a mystery to me. I said the 13 animamas, I believe that in the Torah, I don't understand it. I also don't understand why my father died when I was 3. I still don't understand it 62 years later. I'm going to go probably live out the rest of my years not understanding it. Do I have faith in Hashem? Yes. Faith, I think, means that you live with questions. My wife and I, we're here in Florida, my wife and I, we met parents. We were just schmoozing. We saw a new couple here, so we just went over and said hello. And they're staying by someone on our floor. And they were here from Israel. Mom was wearing a doggy tag, that the soldiers take to battle. And the father had a picture on a string around his neck. A picture, and I didn't say anything. I said, "You're here from Israel, that's beautiful." And anyway, the uncle mentioned that they lost a son fighting in Gaza. It was so heartbreaking. And this couple said, you can see when somebody means something. They said, with such simple faith, I said, I'm so sorry for your loss. I started crying, and both parents said, with such profound, simple faith, she said, our hearts are broken, but we feel privileged that a child of ours fell protecting our people. I can't even imagine what that's like. But people have faith questions around this issue. And they deserve the right to talk it over with people. They deserve the right to be able to discuss this. I want to close with a thought that I think the public at large may not understand that well. And I'm speaking to the LGBTQ folks who are on, and folks who aren't in that space. And forgive me, I'm giving you my understanding of things. I'm not speaking to you as a rabbi. I'm speaking to you just Yanki Horowitz. And I want to explain this concept of, it's called in Hebrew, it's called a macha'ah. See, there's a lot of talk around the issue of acknowledging, accepting LGBTQ people. And I'd like to give you my best understanding of what some of the complications are. It's not, God forbid, that we don't respect LGBTQ people, or that we're shunning. I want to do my best. I've never spoken about this in public. I mean, I didn't take a stab at explaining such a difficult concept. So one more time, forgive me if I get it really wrong. If you see it erased tomorrow from the video, that means I'll look at it and say, Yankee, you didn't get it right. Please just give me some time. 7 minutes, 10 minutes. I understand if you have a life and you want to go, but this is very important. The Torah was transmitted to us in a document. We have the Torah, we have Navi, we have Ksuvim, we have Mishnah, we have Gemara, Talmud. The Torah was given, there's books, Svarim, that have the oral Torah, the written Torah, and that's been written and passed down from generation to generation. A great part of our Masorah, our tradition, the rich tradition that was passed on for thousands of years. And by the way, I think that it's a miracle that our faith and our body of learning was able to be transmitted from generation to generation, despite undergoing such turmoil, so many exiles, so many destruction of life and liberty of our people. It's remarkable that, but by and large, it was transmitted over the years. So forgive me, this is my analogy, this is just Yankee Horowitz. But I hope it'll give you an understanding into something that you might not have. I propose that a lot of the Masorah, our heritage, was passed down not through the books, not through the Svarim, but rather through just learning and observing people. People observed their parents, people observed their teachers, people observed older people. They went to, and you learn by book, and you learn by what you see people do. And here's where it gets tricky regarding LGBTQ issues and other issues as well. And again, bear with me, please. I love to golf. My golf rabbi, my mentor in golf, was a lovely fellow, a good friend of mine named Rick Weinstein from Muncie, New York. He was a scratch golfer, which means he's golfed 72, which is like almost professional level. I never once read the golf rule book. There's a whole rule book about how to play golf. I never even opened it. I don't know it exists. I assume it does, right? There's got to be rules somewhere. But I never looked at it. I watched Rick. If Rick did something, I knew it was right. If Rick didn't do it, that's how I learned golf. Not from books. I observed someone. So there are so many different rules. Who goes first? Who goes second? What happens if your ball gets dropped into the water? Or your ball goes lands on a water fountain, and you can't play it from there. Where do you move the ball to? Of course, there's all kinds of rules. Then there's etiquette. The furthest person from the hole goes first. There's a certain etiquette that you get by observing people. If Rick did something wrong, I would pick it up wrong because I watched him. forgive the clumsy analogy, but we have a concept in halacha, in Jewish law, that especially community leaders, especially more so, but there is a concept that since we base our Masorah and our learning on what we observe, people should take care not to do things that might lead other people to believe that this is okay because a distinguished person saw this and didn't say anything about it. A person's, thank you so much. Who's that? R-A-M-Z. Thank you. It's a good mashal. It's a good analogy. Thank you. You just built my self-esteem. Thank you. I thought about it because I try to explain it to other people, and I'm going to tell you a personal story. So, if somebody saw, just for the analogy, if somebody did a horrible sin and drove a golf cart on the green is like the really fancy short grass that's very carefully tended. Driving a car on that would be like cardinal sin. And if Rick didn't say anything, hey, what are you doing? Then I would say, oh, maybe it's okay. Especially if I'm just learning the game now. Okay? So we have a concept of making a macha, a marker. Some people interpret macha as a harsh statement. It doesn't need to be. It's putting a marker down that what I saw happen, I don't want my silence to be misinterpreted that it's okay. Okay? Somebody withholds a get from his wife. If somebody, God forbid, makes his wife an aguna, by, the marriage is dead, the marriage is over, and he's not giving her a get. And I daven in that shul, and I say hello to the guy. So people can infer from this that Yanki Horowitz is okay with somebody not giving a get to his wife, which is torture and abusive and horrible. But I didn't say anything about it, and they saw me hanging out with the guy. So what I want to explain is, I hear it from so many people, and I understand that I'm not, God forbid, judging, but like, why won't people go to my ceremony? Why won't they make announcements in shul that a gay couple got engaged, or like that? Part of all of this is this concept. God forbid, it's not personal to my brothers and sisters who are LGBTQ. It's not intended to be hurtful. It's that, especially a community leader, is torn between the personal, the personal relationship they have with you, and not creating an image that people could infer from that it's okay. The Torah always built into the Torah, of course, understood that every person doesn't do every single mitzvah, keep every single commandment. But sometimes when it's in public, something, a marker is done. I'll give you two examples. One is, there's a similar expression in common law also. In Monsey, New York, where we raised our children, or other communities that are like more suburban-like, where people have large yards. So a lot of people take shortcuts. Okay, it's Shabbos. You're not driving your car to shul. So if your back-to-back neighbor has the shul across the street from them, if you can't cut through his yard, you're going to have to walk all the way around. It could be half a mile. So people generally take liberties and use people's yards. Forgive me if it's too long. I'm really trying to get a point across. So there's a concept, it's called a rosh ziku barabim. If someone has a house and lets people walk through the yard for years and never once put a marker down and said, no, this is private property, then, on certain circumstances, he or she can't close it off anymore because it became sort of public domain. It's interesting, if you look at common law, they have similar rules according to this thing. It's the same thing with a home. If a squatter, let's say, is living in somebody's house for years, never paid rent, never, and then the boss comes along years later and tries to evict him. He says, well, I was here. It's not your house. Again, those days they didn't have computers, to mark everything down. So what even if the guy's benevolent and says, look, I'm not using the house now, you can stay there, for his own preservation of his property, he would have to make a macha. Doesn't mean he screamed at the guy. What he would do is he would say, I want you to leave for 20 minutes because it's my house. And he would put up, let's say, a sign. This house belongs to Yankee Horowitz. I'm letting you stay there. So that disrupts the fact on the ground. So many people in, let's say, in Monsey or other communities, one Shabbos a year, they'll put a sign up and saying this is private property. Nobody can walk through here this Shabbos. It's a macha, it's a marker. It just says, it establishes that this belongs to me. Okay? It's not done by yelling at people. It's just done to show ownership of it. I'm going to tell you a personal story that I never thought I would talk about it publicly. But again, I want to illustrate this point. For many years, I was reading the Megillas Esther and Megillas Eicha. I was reading it online. I think it was my father passed away. My father, Abba, passed away 2 days before Tisha B'Av, when Megillas Eicha is read. So we were sitting Shiva, and when we came back from the funeral, we said, well, tomorrow we have to read Eicha. So I said, I'll read Eicha. I'll read Eicha for everybody here. They were talking about having a minyan in the house, a quorum for praying. So I said, I'll read Megillas Eicha. And just on a whim, I went on I have a large email list. It wasn't social media. It wasn't that ubiquitous then. I sent an email to my list that I'm reading Megillas Eicha. And I did a conference call, and I did that. So we had hundreds of people joined. I wrote, it's not in place of going to shul, but just count. If you're not going to hear the Megillah anyway, this is for you. People who are homebound, the people who have young children. I got such beautiful messages from people across the country. Like, I remember specifically a guy in Minnesota wrote to me that he's 3 hours from a Jewish community, and he does everything himself, and it's the first year that he sat with his children and heard Megillas Eicha. Like, it was so meaningful to him, and it was meaningful to me. So I did it for Purim also. We read Megillas Esther. Okay? This went on for years. During COVID, I sent out an email to my list that I'll be reading the Megillah on social media and on a conference call. That was it. I got a call from one of the leading rabbis in the country, like a top tier rabbi. Someone I stand up for when we're talking on the phone. Just parenthetically, when I meet somebody distinguished, I'll stand up if we're in person, but some people I stand up when the phone rings. My kids used to think it was hysterical. They say, Dad, Tom, why are you standing up? He doesn't see you. So I said, well, what happened if you had a blind sage came in, a blind Talmud Chacham came in? I'd stand up for him anyway. It's not about him seeing me. Anyway, this is somebody that I would stand up for if we spoke on the phone. We had the most fascinating discussion. I mostly listened. He said that he called up and he said, Rabbi Yakov, he said, I just want to make a macha. He wants to object to the fact that I'm reading the Megillah on the phone. Megillas Eicha is less of a commandment, so to speak. To read the Megillas Esther is higher up. It's something more that you need to go in person. Eicha you should also go to shul for, but Megillas Esther was more. Again, this was during COVID. So he said, I said, why is the Rav calling me? So he said, many people in my shul came to me, and they said that they called up and they said, they just wanted to ask me a halacha. Is it okay if they listen to Horowitz is doing the Megillah, Rabbi Horowitz? So they want to know if they could not come to shul because they didn't want to come because of COVID. Should they listen to the Megillah, on the phone? And he said, no, electronically, whatever. I'm not going to go into all the details. This rabbi felt, some others felt differently. He said that listening electronically, it doesn't fulfill the obligation. And in other words, he said that he felt that it's something that I shouldn't be doing. But he didn't tell me. It was a fascinating conversation. Again, I'm 35 years younger than him. And he this is what he said. He said, Rabbi Yakov, I'm making a macha. Meaning, I said, what do you mean? Well, people are coming, and in other words, insinuating that in years to come, maybe the lesson will be learned that it's okay to listen to the Megillah on the phone, and people won't go to shul, not realizing that this was something that was only done at that time because of the situation. Okay? So this is what so I said, he said, I'm making a macha, and then he wished me so politely. He said, I just want to wish you a beautiful Purim. You should have nachas and mazel, and thank you for all the work you do. Nothing. So I started to explain myself. I said, Rebbe, I just want to know, there's so many hundreds of people who listen. I felt so passionately about it. He said, Rabbi Yakov, I'm not telling you what to do. I didn't tell you what to do. You didn't ask me. I'm making a macha. That was the politest macha I ever heard in my life. So he was putting a marker down. That means he wanted me to know that he wasn't okay with me doing that. He didn't tell me what to do. If I didn't listen to him, it's my business. But he wanted to make a macha. And I must tell you, it was a few hours before Purim started, and in my heart of hearts, I respect this man enormously, but in my heart of hearts, I knew people were going to be disappointed and wouldn't hear the Megillah, my steady customers and the COVID people. I thought it over, and I sent an email to my list. I didn't write why. It's the first time I ever said the story in public. So I did not say that the rabbi told me not to do it. And I didn't say anything. I just wrote that that due to circumstances, I won't be doing Megillas Esther this year. And a few people wrote to me. This is the first time I've been following you. It's the first time in 20 years I'm really disappointed. Someone told you not to and you didn't. You should stick to your guns like you always do. Whatever. It's the after is not important. Parenthetically, just so you know, I sat down and I wrote a message on our family chat, writing what happened, and writing how passionately I felt that I should still do it. And I said, kids, we have 5 grown children and their spouses. And I wrote, kids, this was a very difficult thing for me to do, but the rabbi said, he didn't tell me I have to do it, but I felt it was the right thing to do. But that's what a machal looks like. So I want to make clear that in these interactions, even when people feel that they need to make a machal or make a statement about all of this, trolling on the internet, nasty, is not even part of it. I said it was the politest macha I ever heard in my life, and he just put a marker down. To close, my dear friends, because I've been working in this space for so long, because I see the heartache of so many people, trying to figure it out, trying to be true to themselves, trying not to upset their families. It's so painful. When one of the gedolim that I go to for advice told me to get involved in this LGBT parenting, helping parents of LGBTQ kids raise their children, he told me specifically that the emotional health issue. He said, I've been asking him questions for 23 years. And it was the first time he ever expressed himself in a declarative term like that. He said, Rabbi Yakov, you must do this. He never, ever, ever said this in that tone of voice. Not tone of voice, but such a declarative. He said, you must do this. Du musst tun. And he said that he was terribly concerned about the emotional toll it's taking on people, including people that are harming themselves. I personally know more than a few LGBTQ people that I was involved with who never took their lives. My wife Udi, is my soulmate. I'm happiest when we're together alone. We're married, Baruch Hashem, 44 years. And it's such a source of comfort to me that we have each other and we have a relationship like this. I can't even imagine having to make a decision. I believe in every word of the Torah, but I can't even imagine the decisions that LGBTQ people who are Torah observant have to grapple with. And I want you to know that because Baruch Hashem, I work very hard at sending messaging that I'm approachable. People talk to me early on in situations like this. And I know people that were celibate for years and years and years. And then finally, after a certain amount of time, they said, I just can't do this anymore. Are you going to tell me that it's not notable that he struggled or she struggled with the issue for so long? One of the I told you a story about a young man that came to my house talking about the fact that he was gay. He told me these words. He said, we call Yosef HaTzadik, because he resisted he was seduced by, the wife of his boss, Potiphar's wife, tried to seduce him. And he was Omid bin Isayan. In other words, he didn't allow himself to be seduced. So we call him Yosef HaTzadik. This kid, in all sincerity, with deep respect, he didn't say it like a throwaway line. He says, Rebbe, they call him Yosef HaTzadik because he resisted his temptation for 15 minutes. He said, I'm doing this all my life. I just spoke to a group of people who are high 20s, 30s, who are still Omid ben Isayan, meaning they're not in relationships. And just parenthetically, if you hear a child says, especially kids, they say that they're gay, it doesn't mean they're violating anything. They're talking about their orientation, not necessarily that they're having sex. So it's so complicated. It's so complicated. And it's something that really isn't discussed in public. Why am I doing it? I don't know. because I think it needs to be talked about in a respectful way, in a way that people can treat our brothers and sisters with respect, with dignity, and try to understand. None of us can. I don't even begin to say that I understand. I never tell people, I understand what you're going through. Are you kidding? Of course I can't. I don't. So I'm begging everyone to please be mindful. Rav Schwab said, be a good friend to your friends who have children who are gay and trying to figure it out. Be the type of person that people can confide in, people who are lonely and frightened, and doing their best to do what they have to. That's my plea, that's my request, and I thank you for listening. From time to time I'm going to speak up like I do now. Thankfully we have a forum where you can do this. I'm going to be posting the recording, and I'll leave a link to if you can go now to my Instagram story, there's a link to some articles that I wrote about other things like that, and other things that you can read. Feel free to message me here on Instagram or on other social media platforms. My email is ryh@thebrightbeginnings.com. Thankfully, if you are LGBTQ and you're trying to reach out for help, then I'll be glad to get you in touch. There are some good organizations who can help you. Wishing you mazel and bracha, everyone. Have a good night.